What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Marissa Robinson, Executive Director for DEI at Georgetown. Throughout my career, I have participated in various NCAA leadership development programs, including the Career and Sports Forum, the Postgraduate Internship Program, and currently the Dr. Charles Whitcomb Leadership Institute. These programs have taught me that leadership takes work and effort. They have reminded me that as leaders, it is our responsibility to continue to grow, challenge ourselves, and encourage those around us to do the same. However, as we continue to grow and to pour into others, it is also imperative to take care of ourselves. Remember, you cannot sustain a movement by sacrificing self-care. So provide yourself some grace and then get back after it. Enjoy the episode.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 1Q Leadership. This episode will be hosted by one of our guest hosts, Kendee Hilliard. Kendee is a student athlete with Illinois State and she's also an intern in the athletics department. Take it away, Kendee.
Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. My name is Kendee Hilliard, and I'm a current volleyball player at Illinois State University, and today I will be guest hosting this episode of One Question. On this podcast, we have Kyle Brennan, the current athletic director and my athletic director at Illinois State University since 2020. Hi, Kyle, and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Kendee, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me on. It's a great opportunity. I appreciate it.
So you've served as Utah's Chief Operating Officer and Deputy Athletics Director for Internal Operations before working with us Redbirds. And you could definitely say that Illinois State has had the challenge of everything being so new. A new AD, a new president, a new commissioner. What's been your approach to ensure success with everything being so new on your campus?
That's a great question. Not only is it new, but I came in during COVID. So I got here and couldn't meet people face to face and had to meet when I could face to face. It was behind a mask. Mm-hmm. So the key really is, I think when you get into any position, especially when you're new, is relationships and really building those relationships. So bit of a challenge during COVID, but definitely think we were able to accomplish it. So for me, like you said, the commissioner's new, the president's new. I'm new, and there's some others new on campus as well. And it's really an opportunity because everyone's got a lot of energy and enthusiasm, wants to make positive change. So I really see it as an opportunity to work with visionary people like President Kinsey and Commissioner Jackson. And we're working hard to, have a vision for this conference. As you can see with the additions we've made, Belmont, UIC, and Murray State for some examples. And you see that the league really wants to push ahead, and it really inspires us to do the same. So for me, it's about, really building those relationships, with those leaders, but then within the department and across campus, which leads me into, building a strong culture. And so for me, when you get somewhere new, you really have to listen and learn and take it in and understand the differences. If you see something different that you don't like, it may work at the school you're at. You've got to have some patience and really listen and learn. But when you take some time and find the things that you can get better at, then when you have that culture and those relationships and you have some buy-in, then you can get there.
Yeah, for sure. And as being a part of your culture, I feel like I've invested into your program Rise. So can you go into a little bit more detail about what that is and what that means to you?
Yeah, so Redbirds Rise is kind of our catchphrase for us. It's easy to remember the values when we say Redbirds Rise. So for us, it's about relationships, which I've talked about already. Respect, that really encompasses our EDI approach and really treating everyone the way all of us would like to be treated and finding ways to bring us together. So that's definitely an important value of ours. And then there's integrity, which goes without saying. But service is another one. And service to me really goes with relationships. I really feel like leadership is a servant role. And in order to have great relationships, you've got to have that kind of service mentality and serve the folks around you. So really focus in on serving each other. And I feel like when we serve each other well in athletics, whether it's colleague to colleague or across campus, then we'll serve our customers better, which is our fans and our student athletes. I mean, our student athletes really are the reason that we're here. So And then excellence, and I've talked about that. We want to win. We want to win big. We want to be the leader in this conference in every sport and to have success. And so those values are something I talk about a lot with our staff, trying to keep it simple. Every situation you find yourself in, kind of think back on your values and how you can plug it into what you're doing. And you can find through, those 4 or 5 items pretty much, encompasses what we want to do and who we want to be.
And with that being said, I've known you for almost 2 years now, and I've had you as a mentor for about the same as well. And I've seen you lead based on having a go-getter mentality and attitude while being so genuine and having such a genuine heart. How do you bring that personality to leadership day in and day out?
It's a great question. I think early on in my career, I really struggled with that. You'd look at the people that had success or gone on to be ADs, and you feel like you almost have to copy them or replicate them because that's what people want. And just found out as I went on that being yourself is the best way to go. You're at your best when you're yourself. And I've had this advice before, just be yourself on an interview. And I said, well, I'm the best at being me. I can't really be anyone else. And so finding your voice, I think, is really important. Finding a way to bring your own personality and your own touch to things and stay true to who you are. And really, for me, it's trying to embody those values. If I value relationships, if I value service, excellence, integrity, all those things, then I find that my personality does come through. So very important to have, I think, genuine, authentic leadership and relationships. There's no room for arrogance in our department or with me or anybody else. This business is tough enough. It'll correct you if you think you're too good. So I think you have to stay humble and really keep the focus on what's important. And like I said before, it's relationships and our student athletes. And so it's not hard for me anymore to find my own voice, but it took a while to get to trust that I could be myself, I think. And so now, I'm a little older, a little wiser, 47 years old, and I found that. And so feel like, it's an opportunity to do things the way I'd like to do them. When you work for people for a long time, you see different styles and you like to take pieces of them, but you always think, man, I want to do it and I want to do it this way. And so I've focused in on having a great culture, great relationships. Athletics is supposed to be fun, So we're going to have fun while we're doing this. We're going to work really hard, but it's also fun and a privilege to work in college athletics. And so if you remember that every day, you can have a great experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I just love how you said athletics is fun and it's supposed to be fun. With that being said, like on the back end, what's your thought process into making tough decisions?
Well, I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, but really I do go back to those, guiding principles. You have to look at your values. And if a decision goes against your values, I think right away, that's a red flag for you that you really got to look at. If it goes against your values, you shouldn't do it. So for me, it's really big decisions. Let your principles guide you. Get good advice. I always think it's important to listen to a lot of different perspectives. I don't have the corner on the truth. There are people with different ages, work experiences, backgrounds that can always add something and create a new vision for maybe what you're looking at. But after all that is said and done, to be honest with you, I go with my gut and try and be true to who I am. So if I do that, I can sleep at night, even if the decision doesn't go right. I think the biggest mistakes I've made in my career is when I've tried to make some of those decisions without including people who probably should be included in the decision. And there's things that you miss. So for me, it's really making sure that I really talk to people who are impacted by the decision. In a lot of cases, that's our coaches. So really asking them about what it is I'm thinking of doing. And then you kind of weigh the pros and cons and you go with your gut. And I really think it's important to trust your gut. A lot of people in leadership, especially when you're young, you're kind of unsure, and I think over time, my gut has steered me right as far as what's right or wrong, or also, just what a good situation is. If there's something gnawing at you, I always think you need to listen to it, I guess is my point.
Yeah, for sure. And so I know you kind of mentioned your background a little bit, but can you just do a deep dive because you weren't fully starting in athletics. You have a totally different path than the rest of us.
Yes. And so I hope for everyone out there that they can take this away from this conversation is that there's no one path to being an AD. And I really got hung up on that early in my career and felt like I had to follow the same path as everybody else. and realized that I have different experiences, things I can bring to the table that are unique. And so I started to embrace those instead of try to minimize. But my background is I started as a lawyer, and law school is not for the faint of heart. So I finished it, and then I thought I better practice, but I never really had a burning desire to be a lawyer. And I got into doing estate planning, which for those of you out there who've had your will done or a trust, it's not the most exciting experience. And so that's what I was doing. And I had to do something I was passionate about. I was dying in that job. And so really what my passion was higher education. I had a professor in college who really guided me and mentored me after I stepped away from school and convinced me to come back and really changed my life. And so I went back to him and some others and said, what are my options? And it was kind of like the PhD route if you want to get back on campus. And I'm like, I had one child at the time and it was just too much commitment for school. So through some networking, found a lot of lawyers are getting into NCAA compliance. And so for me, it was the opportunity to be on a college campus, which I was passionate about. I'd always been passionate about sports. I played everything through high school and loved it. And so I was like, this is perfect. And so I left my job as a lawyer. My wife was a regional manager for Chase Bank at the time. We were living in Denver and we had a 2-year-old son. And we left for Northern Illinois, where I made $4,000 my first year as a graduate assistant. And it was a great experience and got me where I am today. And from there, I was able to land a job at TCU and kind of take off. So it doesn't come without sacrifice, but if you want to work in college athletics and you're passionate about it, there's definitely a way in.
For sure. And you mentioned how there are so many different ways people can get into the industry. What's been your approach to providing opportunities for women and other marginalized groups?
That's a great question. I think it's probably twofold. One, I think you have to work on some long-term approaches. Mm-hmm. So here at Illinois State, for example, we use graduate assistants heavily as a part of our workforce. But what happens is inevitably someone leaves because Illinois State, for a lot of people, their first job and they're trying to move on to, another level, which is great. But when those people leave, we're all kind of in a panic. And we go to the GAs who've been working there that we know that do a good job and we plug them into those jobs. The problem is our GA pool hasn't been diverse. Mm-hmm. And so the major source of a lot of our employees is coming from a non-diverse pool. And so been working closely with the president and some leaders on campus to try and expand some of the majors that flow into athletics and really be thoughtful and strategic about who we bring in as graduate assistants. That's one thing. The other thing is sometimes you just have to make change now. Yeah. And when I looked around our senior staff group, it just wasn't acceptable. And so we're not made of money here at Illinois State, but I created a position for Nona Richardson, who was the SWA at Utah and had left there. And I'd worked with her previously at Ball State as well. And so brought her on. Very excited that she's here. And then also created another assistant AD position for equity, diversity, and inclusion. Again, created out of thin air because we didn't have that position at the time. So sometimes you have to kind of force the issue because you can't wait for people to leave. And so looking for those opportunities. And then I've encouraged all of our staff that they need to, and myself included, work at networking prior to when a job comes open. So I've challenged all of our leaders to have 2 or 3 people that they are ready to hire if they ever lose a position under them. And those people should be diverse. And so really making an effort to recruit and be proactive rather than just waiting for the job to open. And it's almost too late at that point sometimes.
Yeah. With being at a mid-major university and institution where you're currently or constantly dealing with not only student athletes moving to and from the Power Five, but coaches and staff as well, how are you managing the dynamic of people who are leaving?
So it is a challenge. And for me, it's about finding out what their goals are and then supporting them. Some people really like moving to Bloomington and love the school and really want to raise a family here. And to those people, we can really commit. For others that are just getting started, I'll meet with them and say, what are your career goals? Where do you want to go? And if the next thing for them is Power Five, then I'm supportive of them getting there. Mm-hmm. Because that means they did a really good job here and they leave it in a better place than how they found it. With coaches, it's a little more challenging. Definitely the salaries are different when they try and move up to Power Five. And we can't necessarily compete with that. But my strategy has been when we identify a really good coach, even before they necessarily have success, you got to take a little risk. and show that love and that contract before people are knocking at the door. That's first. And then second, trying to find all the things that you can that are little things that really improve their life and their experience. So, letting the coach's family travel with them on the road, or giving them a suite at the game, or helping them with childcare, or getting them whatever it is, all those little things to create a situation where if they leave, it's purely for money.
Yes.
You want to create that kind of culture where they're like, I'm leaving this and I'm really scared to kind of leave because it's so good and it's so secure and I can have such success here. Do I really want to just chase the paycheck? And so that's kind of how you try and set it up. Some people leave, some don't, but that's the goal.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it seems like you have a great plan to manage people leaving, but to kind of switch gears, what is your greatest advice for the next generation of ADs like myself?
Well, I mentioned one thing already is, find your own path. You don't have to have someone else prescribe it for you. There's definitely different ways to the chair. I would tell people that want to be ADs and make that move to the chair is be passionate. Don't go into it because you want a paycheck or because you want to be the boss. Do it because it's something you're passionate about, and do it at the right location. I'm really blessed to be here at Illinois State. It's a great school and a great conference. But a lot of friends I've seen over the years just rush to the first job that they can get, and then find themselves looking for jobs, in the short future afterwards, because some schools are a real challenge. You got to know what you're walking into. So I really think it's important to not be too anxious. So many people really want to get to that chair so fast that they ignore kind of the lessons along the way or the good opportunities that are out there. And so, trust yourself, have, your own path can get there. Really rely on the people around you, and then make sure that you pick a good institution.
I love that, just because my passions and aspirations of being an AD, and this is just I know it's like super helpful not only for me but for other people listening as well.
Well, I'll be working for you one day. I always tell you that. So
we'll see. But my last two questions is kind of a 2-for-1. So to work in this industry, I think a portion of you has to be like hardwired and competitive. Yeah. So as an AD, how do you hold your composure when you don't necessarily love a decision like the president or commissioner makes?
I have more trouble with the refs, to be honest with you, than the presidents or the
don't worry, that's coming.
But it is a challenge because you're not always going to be aligned with your president, and that's not anything negative. It's just life. None of us agree on everything. I think the other thing to keep in mind is, as an AD, you get it's easy to get tunnel vision. You're thinking about your own programs, your own department, and not really realizing how you plug into the rest of the university or the community. And that's the president's job. And so a lot of times when there's been disagreement, I will bring something forward and there'll be a reason that's unrelated to my asking of why we can't do it or we need to do something different. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that. My job is to push what I can to bring to the president, see what we can do, or to the conference, but it's their job, to tell me, hey, you got to think about this or that. You don't know the full picture over in athletics. The president really does. So I think from that standpoint, it's important to, think about, but then at the same time, it's really important, I think, to support your president in public and in private. It's very easy in public to say, our president's great or whatever. But when you go to the president, and I'm not using ours as an example, but just generically speaking, you go to your president and you ask for something and you're denied, I think it's very important to walk out of there, coming back to your department, not blaming the president, saying, if we could have had this, we would have been good. But that, the president said no.
For sure.
So I think it's really important to come back with, hey, this is where we're going. I'm on board. We can do this. And you really need to be supportive of your leadership because it's lonely, this job. And I've realized that being an AD, that the president's job is going to be very lonely as well. And Jeff Jackson's commissioner's job, they get lonely. And so, but they're there for a reason and they see the full picture and they're there to help guide you. And so, we have our spirited debates or whatever, but when we leave the room, we got to be lockstep.
Yeah, for sure. And I love working underneath all three of y'all because you'll have totally different personalities, but it seems like you'll all connect in a not a weird way, but like in a good way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's good because we are different people that
Yeah,
kind of
totally.
we do complement.
Totally different leaders,
Yeah.
but it's a huge respect in amongst each and every one of you.
Yeah.
So I loved like looking at that and observing that. So you kind of jumped the gun on my last question,
Okay.
but like how do you hold your composure when a reffing decision like doesn't go your way?
It is challenging. You know, I can think back to a few calls over my career that I've seen, and sometimes they change the course of your program. I was at Utah when we were in the top 5 in the country and undefeated, and had a call go against us that cost us the game. You know, knocked out the Rose Bowl opportunity, all those different things. So it can be really important. But at the same time, for every call that's good, there's one that, you know, you probably shouldn't have got that you got, and, you know, vice versa. They go every way. But I'm a fan, you know, and I'm at the game. I'm into it too. And so sometimes I kind of get up and I try to keep it under control. But, you know, I think the hardest part is to, after the game, when you think it's cost you, is to stay calm. And you have to reach out to your commissioner, but to do it probably the next day, after you've had some time to think about it and to cool down. You know, there's nothing they can really do at that point. But I think if you call up screaming and going crazy, that's not going to help your cause. As tempting as it is, many times throughout my life, I've tried to learn to sit back and be quiet. But once in a while, you see me get up and say something. I am human.
I love that. And I love that you're a fan of all sports here as well.
Yeah.
And I've loved having you as an AD and just as a mentor as well. But unfortunately, we have to close off.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, Kendee. And for all you listening out there, Kendee is a student athlete who's going to be an AD, obviously, but she is taken advantage of being a student athlete more than anyone I know. Volunteered for every opportunity. Interned when she didn't have to intern. Lead groups like SAC and Redbirds for Change and other things like that. I'm just so impressed with how you've realized what an opportunity you have in front of you and how you're taking advantage of it. The networking you're doing with a lot of, you know, people who are quite older than you and out in the field already, and you hold your own. And so just you're a model to how I think student athletes can really come into college and take full advantage. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so much for all the kind words and just taking time with doing this interview. In closing, thank you all for listening to this episode of One Question. And as always, I'm Kendee Hilliard, and go Redbirds.
Go Redbirds.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.